Hey everyone, Lewis aka SpriteMan 1991 here with another top 5 list. This one was requested by the YouTube user SpriteMan, who wanted me to do top 5 Marvel and DC characters. So I did DC Comics last week, and so this week I decided to do Marvel characters. Unlike last video though, there's not going to be a shirt change every time I mention a new hero. Unfortunately do not have that many Marvel shirts. But you know, sit back, relax, and enjoy my list of top 5 Marvel characters. Let's get started. Number 5 on my list is Doctor Strange. Okay, Doctor Strange, he is really kind of a new addition to this list because I didn't start to get into Doctor Strange until the announcement of the Doctor Strange movie, because I figured once we got close to the release date, I might need to make a few videos about Doctor Strange. So I decided to read up on some Doctor Strange comics, and he is actually a pretty interesting character. First of all, he is an actual doctor. So you know, I know there are some characters out there who are actual doctors, and I do have doctor in their title, but other characters that do say doctor, they kind of embellish a bit, as in they're not actually doctors. But Doctor Strange is. In fact, being a doctor is very important to his origin story, because he was a brilliant surgeon, top of his field, until he got into a car accident and lost his, and because of the nerve damage to his hands, he was no longer fit to perform surgery. So that led him on a whole path to figuring out a way to cure the damage to his hands, and eventually, though, that led him to the Ancient One, who then took him on as his apprentice, and he became the Sorcerer Supreme. Now, Sorcerer Supreme, that is probably the most awesome title I have ever heard. I mean, just the way it sounds, Sorcerer Supreme. Just you say you're the Sorcerer Supreme, and it just feels like anyone you're facing is just like, oh shit, I do not want to mess with this guy, and they just immediately back off. Unfortunately, that's not really the case with Doctor Strange. In fact, also because of his magical abilities and his duties as Sorcerer Supreme, he ends up not just defending Earth, but like several other magical realms on almost a daily basis, and it's pretty impressive. Also, Stephen Strange isn't really and he's also proven himself worthy of the Sorcerer Supreme title so much that everyone in the Marvel Universe pretty much recognizes him as the go-to guy for magic. And it's because of this, he even has a seat on the table of Marvel's own Illuminati, which is nice because he's basically the head of the magical department of the Marvel Universe, which is really cool. And you know, he's got a lot of charisma. He seems very old and very wise, which is really cool. And not like wise as in boring, but like wise as in he's pretty interesting. And he can deliver things with quick wit and humor, which is really nice. And that's why Doctor Strange is on my list. Moving on, number 4, it would not be Marvel if I did not mention at least one mutant. And my most favorite mutant of all is Wolverine. He is Marvel's very ultimate badass. Wolverine, no matter what you hit him with, he just gets back up and will slash your throat, because he's got pretty much the strongest healing factor of anyone, and he's got an adamantium skeleton, so his bones won't break that easily, and he's got claws, and he has been around for a long time. He's been around for a long time. He did get amnesia, forget most of his past, but he's got his memories back, which is great. He's pretty much, whenever you think of X-Men, you think of Wolverine, because, let's face it, he's the flagship character. He's got the most interesting backstory, because when he was first written, we didn't know anything about him, and it was later established that because of all the Weapon X treatments, he lost his memories. So, you know, that was kind of a good thing, because it let later writers kind of fill it in about what happened, and, you know, what built into, until finally we did, until years later, with thankfully an event known as House of M, after that whole debacle, Logan did get all of his memories back, which is very great. Also, in the X-Men movies, I can honestly say my favorite part about them has been Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And this March, he is going to be Wolverine one last time in the movie simply titled Logan, which is great. I'm really looking forward to it. Wolverine, you know, whatever he does, he he really is, and to sum it up, it's best said as he's the best there is at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. And I don't love Wolverine just because he's a cigar smoking, whiskey chugging, adamantium claw slashing badass, but also because he does have a softer side when it comes to younger mutants or younger kids with powers. He has been a mentor to several notable X-Men characters over the years: Kitty Pryde, Jubilee, X-23, who by the way is now the new Wolverine since Logan died. So yeah, overall, Logan, he is a very complex character. I mean, when you first see anyone who sees like an image of Wolverine knows that he's really hardcore badass, but then when you start reading more stories about him, you start to get a little deeper into his character and you realize he's more complex than just a guy who has metal claws and slashes bad guys. No, there's much more depth to it, and I think that's really impressive. And that's why Wolverine is number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list is Iron Man, Tony Stark. Now, he and Doctor Strange both have very similar origins. They're both men at the both highly respected big names in their fields until an accident derails their lives and sends them off into different directions. For Stephen Strange, it was becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. For Tony Stark, it was having shrapnel really close to his heart to the point that he had to put a magnet in order to keep it from going in too deep, and also being captured by terrorists. And the only way out was to build an all-powerful weapon that he could use to get out, which was the very first Iron Man armor. And upon his escape, when Tony got back, he realized he's done a lot of damage selling weapons, but now he can probably do something good with this Iron Man armor, and thus the Armored Avenger was born. Now, I do like Tony a lot because he's an interesting character. First of all, he is very much like his armor. Now, what I mean by that is, whenever Tony goes into a situation or has an obstacle, he always comes in with a new suit of armor that can easily handle it. And Tony's the same way because, like his armor, he adapts. He figures it out, and he learns from that experience and figures out how to apply it to his other inventions and armor. And also, I do like Iron Man because of the variety of armor he has. It's not just always red and gold suit. There are tons of variants for deep sea exploration, space. I believe there's also an Arctic armor at one point. And of course the Hulk Buster, aka Veronica. And Tony hasn't really had it easy. There have been several instances, not just with biggest battles. His biggest battles haven't been really with supervillains, but really with himself. For one thing, alcoholism. That took Tony a while to beat, and eventually he hit rock bottom. But he was able to pull himself up. He invented a new armor and was able to get back in the game and take back his company from Obadiah Stane. Also, another instance was a story I recently read called Armor Wars, where Tony discovered that Justin Hammer apparently hired a spy to break into one of his labs and steal some components from his armor. That led to Hammer selling the tech to supervillains, and Tony decided to destroy all armored supervillains, not just armored supervillains, but anyone whose armor replicated his. And eventually, after he destroyed it, he considered officially retiring from Iron Man, but he didn't. There was one more enemy left, and in order to defeat them, he had to be Iron Man one last time. And fortunately, it wasn't the last time. If you want to, you can check out my review of the Armor Wars story. Tony has been through a lot of stuff over the year, has been through a lot of struggles, but he has come back stronger. He has come back from anything. He's adapted his armor to whatever situation. And you know what? It's not just the armor that makes Tony Iron Man. It's him. It's himself. It's pretty much the armor does most of the work, but he's the guy who builds it and fixes it and adapts it. So that's why Tony is definitely. And Tony, it's not just the armor. Tony has come up with several ideas that have saved the world multiple times. He's pretty much the head of the Illuminati, Marvel's Illuminati. I keep going back to it just because it sounds like it is a really interesting concept when you think about it. So yeah, Tony is a really smart guy, very, very willing to do whatever it takes. Always adapts to the situation. Whenever he's stuck up against an unstoppable force, he figures out a way to stop it. So that's why Tony Stark is number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is Captain America, Steve Rogers. Now, one of the reasons why he's on this list is because he's probably one of the only Marvel characters that's still being published to this day that's as old as DC's Trinity, which is really impressive. Also, but the main reason I like Captain America is because he is very strong-willed and knows how to stand his ground whenever his beliefs are challenged. I mean, no matter who challenges it or who tells him what he should do instead, he will always stand his ground and say, basically, no, you move. That's a line, just to quote a line from Civil War. That was a really good line. Yeah, and no matter what he has to go up against, the U.S. government, S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Man, he will always stand firm and just say, if he feels like something's going in the wrong direction, he will say something and do something to change it, which is impressive. And also, Cap is a natural-born leader. He knows how to inspire hope in people, which is very great. Very great. And like his mighty shield, Captain America will not yield. Yeah, that was kind of corny. But overall, Captain America, he's brave, he's selfless, and yeah, I know right now, yeah, he is brainwashed by Hydra, but trust me, that will definitely be an interesting way to work out. I mean, it's weird that I'm saying all this, and I know that he is still a part of Hydra, but he's still willing to stand up. Even when he is Hydra, he still is willing to stand up to whatever force opposes him so that he can do what he thinks is right. So yeah, Captain America, he is strong-willed and natural-born leader, and that's why I like him. My number one favorite Marvel character of all time, and this really shouldn't surprise anyone, but it's Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man is because I like him because there's something about him that almost anyone can find relatable. Okay, for me, when I started reading comics, it was the beginning of a school year at a different school for me, and I felt very relatable to Peter Parker because the very first Spider-Man stories I read were actually the very first ones published, and that was when Peter Parker was still in high school, still the awkward teenage wallflower, and I was in the same boat. And reading these made me feel a little better, knowing that one of the most recognizable superheroes went through something like this, and it got me through that school year, and it helped a lot reading those stories. And another thing that I think people will find relatable is something that Spider-Man writers have referred to as the Parker luck, which basically is that things will be going well for Spider-Man for like a few minutes, but then suddenly, train wreck, everything gets screwed up. The most notable example I can always think of is Spider-Man saves the day, defeats the bad guy, but he'll still be called a menace in the media. He'll change into Peter Parker, but while fighting the bad guy, Spider-Man, Peter will miss a very important personal arrangement, whether it's lunch with Aunt May or a dinner date with Mary Jane Watson. It can be going all right for Peter, but then suddenly just derails, and suddenly he's back at step one all over again. And I think that happens to a lot of people. Things will be going well, you're happy, you're relaxed, but then suddenly, bam, life hits you hard, and suddenly you just fall off the tracks. And yeah, but Spider-Man, that happens to him a lot, but he always gets back up. He always gets back up and is web slinging onto his next adventure. He learns from his experiences, and Peter definitely learns that life is, he learns that being Spider-Man is hard, but this is something he has to do because he was given this power, and it's his responsibility to use it to help people and make the world a better place. And yeah, also his origin story. While every superhero origin story does involve the tragic loss of a loved one, Peter was inadvertently responsible for his own origin, so to speak. because he did let the mug, because one night when he was leaving his wrestling gig, he let a thief walk by, didn't bother to stop him. Then later, his Uncle Ben's murdered, and he discovers that the guy he let go was the guy that killed Uncle Ben. And of course, that is the moment where Peter Parker realized that with great power comes great responsibility. And that is probably one of the best lines I can think of in comics and TV and movies. Like, that's one of the most iconic lines ever that everyone says, with great power comes great responsibility, because it's true. It really is true when you think about it. If you do have the power to make a difference or do something, then it's your responsibility to use it wisely and help. And that's something I always try to remember. I always try to remember those words from Spider-Man, from Uncle Ben: with great power comes great responsibility. So those are my top 5 Marvel heroes. What do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree with my list? What are your top 5? I did film and upload my top 5 DC heroes last week. I'll put a link so that you can click on there and check out my top 5 DC characters. What do you guys think? What were your top 5 Marvel characters? Do you have any other requests you want me to do? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. Lewis, SpriteMan 1981, saying see you later.